putting this together today so that I can come to Watertown for the purpose of my formal announcement of my candidacy for governor of South Dakota. I wanted to pull together a lot of good friends and supporters and talk about that a little bit. Before I do, I want to just make a couple of points that are important to me as an individual. There's someone here today who is very, very important to me and is a fellow trial lawyer. It's what I get to do for a living. I'm very proud to represent people, not just in the legislature, but in courtrooms throughout South Dakota. But to me, the ultimate in that area is my friend Bruce Ford. And the best way I can say it is, Bruce Ford represents to me the conscience of my profession. If you want to know what lawyers think, you can take a poll. If you want to know what lawyers should think, you can ask Bruce Ford. And that's how I feel about this guy. And I'm honored to meet him. Now, the next person I want to call out is Gene Dowd. Gene is sitting right here. Gene is a very important person to people in Miller, South Dakota, because of all of his work on the organ and the Presbyterian Church and other areas. I want you to take a good look at Gene Dowd, and I want to tell you what my mother used to say about him. My mom loved Gene, and my mom said, when you die and you go to heaven, all the angels will look like Gene Dowd. And Susie, do you remember the Christmas program at church when Dad walked in and was singing the solo, and it's supposed to go "Oh silently, oh silently," and he sang "Oh quietly, oh quietly," and he couldn't get it right. No matter how many times he practiced, my dad was a great tenor, baritone, but he couldn't get it right. Gene remembers that story. He remembers Dad walking in the church and singing that song. Well, as you can tell, I'm very proud to be from a small town in South Dakota. I want to talk just briefly about it, but first I want to introduce you. You have not met them all, the members of my family. My wife Susan is here. These are my sons, Sam in the dark hair and Pete in the lighter hair. And we're very fortunate to have my sister Nikki Heidenberg here from Washington, D.C. Nikki, thank you. Okay, great. So, let me just tell you what we've been doing. We've really had a great couple days, and I'm just really thrilled to be here. I want you to know that I come to this cause of running for governor with a real bias. My bias is one that you probably share. I love this state. I love South Dakota. I love coming to places like this, the community, this wonderful art center, and to be around you. It's really a thrill for me, and I always think about the great potential that we have as South Dakotans. We're a better state sometimes than we even think we are. We're a better people. We have great potential, and we can really take South Dakota to the next level if we make some good choices in the next election. You know, we have some serious challenges before us. 2010 is a really serious year in South Dakota. We've got budget problems. We're facing, the next governor will inherit a budget deficit of $107 million. But to put this in context, the entire general fund of South Dakota each year is $1.14 billion. So the annual deficit we'll be facing is 10% just about of the entire general fund of the state. That is a serious and daunting problem for the next governor. We put ourselves in this position because we haven't been disciplined enough in state government. The administration has submitted 7 out of 8 budgets that have had structural deficits. That is, we have spent more money than we have taken in as a state. We have added state employees at the rate of 1 every 48 hours. When this administration took office 7 years ago, we had 12,900 state employees. We now have 14,465. Okay? That's a growth rate that's unsustainable in a state with the population of Toledo, Ohio, that has remained relatively flat over those 7 years. It's time for us, as citizens and taxpayers, to ask why that has been allowed to happen. What we're going to do about it is adopt some of the proposals that we've made over the last 4 years. He mentioned the numbers in the legislature. They're actually improving pretty dramatically for us. When I was elected in 2006, We had gained 5 seats in the Senate, so that there were 20 Republicans and 15 Democrats. In the 2008 election, there was technically one loss, but that was an individual who was a Democratic legislator and changed to Republican so that he could win on the reservation. His name is Jim Bradford. So really the numbers stayed the same. And in the House, he gained, we're up to 24 now in the House, so that we have more than a third in both the Senate and the House. So we're really gaining ground and have for the last 2 cycles. But what we're going to do is adopt some of the proposals that we have made over those last 4 years. We're going to cut spending in rough times. We're going to cap spending in good times, in growth times. What's that mean? I've introduced a bill each of the last 4 years, a couple of the last 4 years, to cap growth and spending at the state level at the same rate that we impose on schools and counties. Right now, by state law, the county commission here in Coddington County cannot increase by more than 3% or the rate of inflation just less. The school district in Watertown cannot increase by more than 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever's less. Yet South Dakota state government, hypocritically, has refused to live on that same diet. We think it's time that they did. And if we had, over the last 7 years, here's what would have happened. Instead of facing a $107 million deficit, we'd have a $522 million surplus. And we wouldn't be facing some of the immediate problems that we have. In addition to that, we're going to have to sell some airplanes. I know that's tough news for some people, but we don't really need the fleet we have. We need to get rid of the DC lobbyist that we're paying the taxpayers' dollars and then turns around and contributes those dollars to candidates of the Republican Party. Perfectly legal in South Dakota. It's our own version of pay to play, but it's legal. We need to make some of those very basic changes. And if we do, if we have the courage to do that, then the good part, the fun part of state government begins. Investing in children, investing in good paying, clean energy jobs, not just jobs, but careers. We need to invest in careers in South Dakota. I would say Watertown has a pretty good idea of what that's like. Many times over the last 10, 20, 30 years, we've been a great example of economic development, an example that we'd like to see practiced in a lot of other places. But one of the things we have to do is get used to the idea of finding entrepreneurs at home as opposed to looking for them across state lines. Finding people with good ideas here at home, nurturing them. It's a process that we call gardening as opposed to hunting, looking for smokestacks to pull across the state line. Many times that works, but sometimes it's a zero-sum game. You don't really grow economic development that way. We need to change the governor's office of economic development. Kurt probably has a million ideas of how we could go about doing that. We need to take the politics out of it. We need to return it to a process of guaranteeing loans and partnering with entrepreneurs as opposed to a granting process directly. There are all sorts of changes we can make to extend the scope and the reach of economic development in South Dakota, and the focus again has got to be on clean energy jobs.